Oh man, wow. Oh man, I just went through all of this awesome information with no sound. This sucks. Anyways, welcome back, I guess. Now that y'all finally hear me, I guess now that you have the ability to actually listen, what we were talking about was the overall pattern here. Sorry about that. But we were looking at this overall flag here that's been forming since December of 2017, really during the latter part of that month, now heading towards March. And as you can see, we broke out of this overall flag back down inside. And as you guys know, I like to use basic indicators. So we're going to be talking about that. Sorry, I know the volume was down. Everybody's talking about it. Mr. Cotton, F Google, Just Free said finally. He said working. Thank you, Siddhartha, for the shout out there. Mike Wiley in the house. Who else we got? Siddhartha, HR, Tryman Gill. Good to have you. Voodoo Red said yay on Twitch. Sorry about the voice and the audio issue there. But yes, somebody said, Naeem, look at the 4-hour chart of Bitcoin and connect the MACD. You know what's funny about that, Easy? I was doing that while the volume was down, showing the MACD and talking about the actual histogram showing more of a favor towards sellers right now, and then the mic wasn't even on. So anyways, now I can go back into the technical analysis. As you all know, I like fundamental indicators like the Fibonacci retracement, the RSI, the volume. These are really true indicators that show buy and sell volume, that show supply and demand, which is what determines price at the end of the day. And I think that if you guys read the description, we're talking about the market today, reminds me of the eye of a hurricane, right? In the eye of the hurricane, it's calm, but around it is the storm. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. So I want to make sure for the most part, everyone watching tonight understands that this is still a very, very unhealthy market based upon the fact that we broke back into the flag and now we've seen that strong consolidation. Of course, we're going to see some green like we saw today, but if you do look at the moving average convergence divergences, the MACD, you can see these histograms here which determine buyers and sellers and really the strength of them. And you can see here where the sellers at first, this was really during the first consolidation, the sellers were really being weakened out over time, where we finally saw a little bit more of that buy volume and going towards the favor of the buyers, now leaning back down. And you can see the moving average convergence divergence has this blue and this orange line, the blue standing for the fast, the orange standing for the slow value. And you can see how that's now converging back down. And as soon as you see that convergence is really when you start to see it peak back down. The histogram is starting to go in the favor of the sellers. And in my opinion, it makes a lot of sense, being the fact that if you open up this resistance in the 3-hour, you can see we're heading right back towards that flag resistance, which at this point is now back to its original position of where it was several weeks ago, where we saw that resistance there. We couldn't break through it until we finally saw that impulse and then that ABC correction back down to now have us back under this flag, unfortunately, but it is the reality of the market. So if y'all are putting positions in, make sure to be taking profits at this point. It really isn't the most the best time to really hold, in my opinion, long term. I know people talk about hodling, but in my opinion, you do have to keep in mind that there's still a big potential for this to go a little bit lower and see more lows. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today, taking more of your requests on the live stream, as well as going through more of the price predictions for other coins like Ethereum, Tron, Ripple, and Litecoin. So somebody said, what about LTC? We're going to pull up LTC, Sanjay. David Williams says, WTF. Do you not hear me? I'm sure it's working now, hopefully. Somebody said bull trap. Yes, that's a bull trap. So when you see a bull trap, it's pretty much where you fool the bulls, right? You put a little bit of green in the market and people are like, oh, it's going up, and they put their money in, and then next day it's back down. So understand we saw very strong consolidation yesterday and the day before. So today, of course, we're going to see some green, but at the end of the day, is it the safest time to put your money into the market? It really isn't, unless you know what you're doing. And if you're shorting, that's a whole different story. As you all know, we made the video yesterday about how to make money while Bitcoin is going down, and a big part of that is shorting the coin on the way down. And shorting is fairly simple. When you're leverage trading, especially when you know there's known resistance and support levels, you can almost predict that we're going to see resistance right here along this flag, which looks to be right around 95.40, which would most likely be the level of resistance where we'll see that pullback in which you can eventually short Bitcoin if you are margin trading. So somebody says, what do you think about XRP, Trim and Gill? We are going to be looking at XRP today. Anani Moose said, you rule. Thank you, brother. You rule. Man, that helps. I love the appreciation, guys. You can never get enough of that. Carlos Jim said LTC first, please. We will do LTC first, Carlos, just because you said that. Ncash will be a beast. We're actually going to be having an Ncash review soon on the channel, so we'll give you guys a little bit more of an in-depth perspective on what our opinion here on Sniper Soup is on Ncash. Trim and Grill in the house. Nure9 said I had to refresh the page to get audio back. Well, I'm glad that you have audio now. I apologize for that earlier. Mr. Knott said, you are awesome. Here you go. ATM Smasher said, LaCroix crack cocaine for geeks. I don't get that one. Somebody says, thanks for the motivation, brother. Here's what I'll tell all of you. Trust me. I've been through some market cycles. I've been through corrections, and I'll tell you the biggest thing to understand during a correction is the strongest position is having cash on the side to take advantage of obvious bounce and support levels and going ahead and swinging those, but understanding that on the way down, when you see a sharp decline, the best thing to do is have fiat on the side. Don't let institutional traders, or more importantly, the whales that are shorting the market, fool you to go ahead and grab your money, because that's what happens. A lot of time, and especially with the new margin traders, what I find is they will lose a lot of money, being the fact that they don't know what they're really doing when they're shorting. They leverage over 1x, which is pretty much a lot of money for most people, especially even if you're trading $100. If you lose that $100, that's quite significant, right? So if you only have 100, you want to keep the 100, you want to gain 200, right? If you have 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000, you want to be able to keep that and gain more. So the biggest thing to do is understand the market, understand the cycles of the market, and know the difference between a bull market and a bear market, or at least a bear trend or a bull trend, because typically bear markets will last in its stock market from 12 to 18 months up to 24 months, but the crypto market is like I'd say 1 to 3 times faster than the traditional market. So in reality, in this market, you would probably see a bear market last from 4 to 8 to maybe even 12 months, in which I don't want that to scare you, because understand this, we've already been through about 3 months of a bear trend. So we are either halfway there or on the way out of the bear trend, which I think is important to understand, being the fact that you're seeing price levels go back down to where we saw previous lows around 6,000 over the past couple of weeks. And now we're seeing prices start to go up, back down, now seeing a little bit of resistance back in that flag. But the point is, we're back in the flag pattern, which is a pattern that has formed since the latter part of December of 2017, which is where most people need to keep their eyes on. So let's go ahead and pull up LTC USD and then go ahead and take some questions from the viewers here on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope and YouTube. Somebody said, what's up? Credits versus ETH versus EOS. That's a pretty complex question. We can probably go into that for like 2 hours, Sanjay. But I'll tell you what. I'll tell you about ETH and EOS. Very good platforms, de-application platforms. I would go long on a lot of de-application platforms, being the fact that they have intrinsic value in their coin. When you have ICOs on these platforms, those ICOs almost attach their value to the actual coin and the de-application platform itself. So when you look at Ethereum, you're looking at a coin that has all of these other coins like Amisco and EOS, which is now transferring back to its own native blockchain. But you see all of these coins that have an attachment to not only Bitcoin, but the actual de-application platform, like in this case, Ethereum, where you're using the ETH tokens, or even Neo, EOS, Stellar. There's so many great applications, even Syscoin, which was actually in our top 5 for March. Trim and Grill, Treeman Gill, thank you so much for the super chat, brother. Keep up the good work. I definitely will. I really appreciate that. F Google said, bless up, Naeem. Thank you, brother. Trust me, this stuff helps so much. Steve-O said, so good to finally see some green again. It's good, but remember, it's like a hurricane. When you've got a hurricane, I don't know if I'm saying that. I think I have an accent when I say that. But when you're in a hurricane, is it hurricane or hurricane, or no, that's a car. But the eye of the hurricane is calm, and then you've got a storm around. That's kind of what we're seeing right now. It's a little calm, right? Everybody's, oh, it's green. It's all good and, happy, all jolly. But at the end of the day, understand that we just came back from this huge double-digit correction over the past 2 days. And the whole market was involved with that. So seeing a little bit of green right now should obviously be optimistic for those of you that are swinging it, but for the most part, we're still in a downtrend, right? We saw that 5-way pattern down, we saw ABC correction, and now we're seeing a little bit of another impulse, but that's going to see resistance right at that flag. And we're going to be looking at LTC USD as well. It seems like we got a ton of questions here. EMAC said, Naeem, would you mind explaining why you think it's a bull trap? Absolutely. If you pull up the MACD, and we'll actually pull up BTC, we actually looked at it earlier, but when you look at the MACD, this stands for the moving average convergence divergence. You can see on a one-day chart how the MACD is actually now starting to cross back down, and this histogram right here is actually what determines the buyers and sellers. So obviously these are sellers, these are buyers, and you can see how the overall correction when we started, you can see the sellers got less and less, and that's actually what we talked about when we saw Bitcoin consolidating. We looked at the histogram and we said, well, now that we're seeing the sellers, any of y'all were part of the live stream when we actually talked about the histogram and the MACD starting to converge and most likely going to start flipping back around, and that's really where we started to predict the bottom? Who said it? Say I if you were on the live stream when we predicted that. Somebody said I. Aish said, what is wrong with Ripple? David Williams says, Google it, lamb. Silver String 25, say it in Spanish. Huracan. R dash Thakur in the house. Risky business. Somebody says, David Williams says, Google it. Treeman Gill, shout out to Treeman. Thank you so much, brother. Said, can you look at XVG tonight, please? Yes, absolutely. We will definitely look at XVG tonight. Let's go ahead and actually write that down here for y'all so that we can make sure that we actually get to XVG. So XVG Verge, I was looking at it today. I'll leave my opinion for later once we're doing the actual technical analysis. How about that? Somebody says that'd be risky. Explain shorting, please. Kimberly Aguilar, good to have you back. Shorting is actually betting against Bitcoin. So there's companies like BitMEX, for example. The U.S. actually, if you're a U.S. resident, you can't necessarily apply for it. But there are other platforms like Bittrex where you can short certain coins. But when you're shorting a coin, you're betting against it, which means that instead of saying that, hey, Bitcoin is going to go up, you're betting a contract that it's going down. So let's say it's at 5,000 and you're like, hey, I'm going to short Bitcoin and saying it's going to 4,000. Well, now you're shorting it, and you can also leverage for the most part if you're margin trading. And leverage is where you're using either 1x, 10x, 100x to a certain degree, where you're actually trading a certain amount of funds and then also leveraging more funds in the contract. So the difference is where you can actually go ahead and make more profits, you can also lose a lot more. So there's a lot of risk involved with leverage trading, but I would recommend if you're starting off with margin trading, open up a margin trading account and then only short with 1x, because now you're not necessarily leveraging too much, but you're also giving the ability to yourself to go ahead and short and bet against Bitcoin, which you typically can't do using a typical exchange like GDAX, Coinbase, or anything of that nature. So somebody says 90% accurate. Stop hating. Thank you, Just Free. Whoever's hating, we're 90% accurate. Thank you, brother. I'll tell you what, a lot of analysts recently have, been almost flabbergasted by the prices of Bitcoin. I've seen analysts predict 13,000, 14,000, 15,000, and then we crash, right? Some empty Gox comes out of nowhere. So it's really been a zone for Bitcoin in which a lot of people are almost surprised at what we've been seeing going back into the flag. I mean, it wasn't necessarily as expected, because you can see we were pretty bullish on this MACD. You can see we were swinging all the way back up. Buy level started to increase, and now we're seeing that swing back down. You can see sellers are starting to come back into the market, and at that point, MACD's histogram is actually leaning more towards the sellers now, as we talked about before. So back to Litecoin. Let's go ahead and do our quick analysis here before we take more questions and requests from the viewers. So if y'all want to request your coin, put that on your chat, maybe even save it there, and then we'll go ahead and get that there. Somebody said, is leveraging halal? Is it halal? Somebody says, talk about the flipping and Charlie Lee. F Google. Well, we can get into that whole conversation. Maybe we should do a discussion on that. Somebody says, is there a mastermind? Yes, there's a mastermind after. Ruby and above, mastermind afterwards. Somebody says, do you think Bitcoin is forming a cup and handle on the daily? I think so, but this would mean that Bitcoin would probably going back to 6K and maybe lower. What's your opinion? We'll definitely have to look at that. I don't think it's forming a cup and handle. You can also actually probably look at it as a head and shoulder. So I'll actually talk about that in just a sec once we finish the Litecoin analysis, because I think people want to look at Litecoin. It's been acting fairly well. Prices have not consolidated as steeply as Bitcoin has, and you can see we're finding some strong resistance right around support right around 124 US dollars. Now we see this little bit of an uptrend, a little uptick. Now we're seeing a little bit of a consolidation, which is obviously expected once you see these huge run-ups. And now we're seeing a little bit of a support level forming right around 169 US dollars. And what I'll say about Litecoin in a fundamental perspective is I'm pretty bullish about it. If we pull up this Fibonacci retracement here, we'll actually go ahead and draw out potential support and resistance levels that may occur over the next couple of weeks. And you can see here how we're finding some support right along that Fibonacci retracement around the 0.23, heading back towards the 0.38. And in my opinion, as soon as we go back to the 0.38, we're going to see a little bit of resistance. But as soon as we can break past that like we did here, we actually went above and beyond back into the blue, which is the 0.61. And once we enter that 61%, in my opinion, as we start to head back up, we're going to constantly see this channel starting to form until we can see some significant volume come in. Because you can see the one thing we're lacking right now is that volume. Where the volume here was fairly high, you can see volume here has been fairly low. So I think the volume is really the biggest thing for Litecoin and even Bitcoin right now in the market. Compared to what we saw in December, there was so much more volume driving these prices higher. And now that people have exited the market to a certain degree, and there's a lot of money that's outside of the market held in fiat, that's causing volume to go a little bit lower, now resulting in these type of price movements that we've been seeing over the past couple of weeks. So looking at this right now, in my opinion, we're going to be right between this Fibonacci retracement, and this is a good time where you can actually go ahead and swing if you'd like, if you want to take that sort of risk. But understand, in this type of market, these type of consolidations will happen out of nowhere. You can see how we find resistance and support right along the Fibonacci retracements, but out of nowhere we break through these Fibonacci retracement levels. At this point, we found some support, and this is why the Fibonacci retracement is so important. Let me show you this right now. This is one aspect of it that I think is so important. When you see these big drops, you can almost predict that we're going to find that support, because you can see that Fibonacci retracement was right there in the 0.18 or the 0.23, and then you can see we bounced right back up and then going back down and seeing a little bit of extra consolidation from that point on. So somebody says, learned a lot of you in the last 3 months. Legend status. Shout out to Chris. So I think right now with Litecoin, if you are trading it, there's going to be this channel here that's pretty consistent and reliable. So I see the resistance right around 2,000 or 228 US dollars. I think I'm very bullish, in my opinion, for the long term. Litecoin has seen a lot of mass adoption recently. If you go and look at most of the major retailers that are accepting Bitcoin, a lot of them also accept either Litecoin or some of them Ethereum as well. But Litecoin really has those intrinsic value properties that Bitcoin holds, which in my opinion is why I'm a little bit more bullish about Litecoin than I am for other coins that don't have as much intrinsic value. And then there's also those de-application platforms, as we talked about before, which also are coins that I'm a little bit more long-term for. Somebody says, can you tell me where Tron is going to head now? Vishal, we'll definitely have to look at Tron. Abraham said long-term investment. I think any coin that has the intrinsic value, either of Bitcoin where it's limited and it's been around and it has mass adoption, or if it's a de-application platform, or obvious coins that have intrinsic value. There's also coins like VeChain, for example, that have really good use cases in supply and logistics, which also have a high intrinsic value to them, which will eventually see prices starting to rise as it's used more and more. So I think there's a lot more to that. Just Free said, you should write a book, Naeem. I'd buy it. Statistical analysis topic. Here's a question for all of y'all. Here's a question to y'all. Well, first and foremost, where do we have people from today's live stream? I want to see. Like, do we have anybody from out of the United States? Anybody here from India? Anybody here from Europe? Anybody here from Australia? Where do we have people watching from? I'm so curious to know. Somebody said Amsterdam. Somebody said, which coins does your portfolio consist of? At this type of time frame of the market where we're seeing some significant consolidations, I like to typically either have my US dollars in hand, waiting for those high dips, or going back into Bitcoin to ensure that I'm watching the market and what's making the market move, because Bitcoin is what makes the market move, and it's the fastest to react to the market. So somebody said London. Ann Hakens from Groningen. I hope I said that right. Lebanon, London, Jack from London, Mr. Not from Lebanon, Christ Gurav from India, Hong Kong, wow, Hong Kong is a beautiful place, Boston, I love that, but you're in Japan. Why are you in Japan, man? Come on, Evander. Donnie said Germany. I love the Germans. They have some really good bakery, some pastries out there. The bakeries out there are really awesome. Nima Pol from Estonia, wow. Wandula Usaze from the UK. I love that, man. Colorado, Andy Ramos. Steve Chavez said Los Angeles. Man, we got to meet up soon, brother. Somebody said North Pole. Aaron Goram said Zandu. Slovakia, Martin. Wow, that is quite a far drive, if you could even drive there. Ahmad Chaudhary said Australia. Jesse151 said Aussie. Brazil, New Zealand, London. Wow, we got people from all around the world. That is amazing. Another super chat. Wow, we do appreciate that, Treeman Gill. Thank you so much, brother. Is IOTA a good investment? Good question, Mr. Gill. I'm glad you asked that. I'm not a fan of IOTA. If you look at the Tangle network, it's actually built by IOTA. Like, their development team actually built and pretty much worked on their own cryptography, which is unheard of in the cryptocurrency blockchain marketplace. You know, typically you want something that's MIT approved, you know, like SHA-256, stuff like cryptography that's been approved and has been through various tests and stress tests. And the Tangle network was something that was created by the IOTA team, and that's typically unheard of in this type of marketplace where you're creating your own cryptography. You know, you typically want to use something that's actually approved and has been through trials and tribulations already, to where the coding is very safe and secure. So I see a lot of security holes in IOTA. Some people are fans of it. I personally, you know, my mentor actually, his name is Yazan. He actually just had a successful coin listed on CoinMarketCap called the Gibril Network. He talked to me about IOTA because he actually had a couple friends that worked within the team there, and some of them had left, and not necessarily getting a biased opinion, but he just kind of talked about their fundamentals and really what the Tangle network is, and what I'm kind of giving you the layman's terms of. And it really kind of distressed me about investing long term for IOTA. I just see it as more of something that's here today, and it most likely won't see, in my opinion, the type of long term use case that you'll see with other coins. Now, some people are fans. I'm not against it, but that's something that I was almost, given the wisdom of by somebody that was extremely credible, and is somebody that I look up to. So, I like to learn from people that are where I want to be, or at least have had something or have created something of significance, because that's the people that know what they're talking about for the most part, right? You always want to get around people that know more than you, right? You want to get around people that will uplift you, people that will help you grow, not people that will put you down. You guys have to get away from those people putting you down. You got to get around people putting you up, lifting you up. I'm telling you, man. When somebody says cryptocurrency is going to be gone in 5 years, you say, take a hike, man. It's going to be around. Why? It's the future. There's actually a restaurant here in California that I walked into the restaurant, and there's literally a sign that says, we don't accept cash. And I'm sitting there like, whoa, you guys don't accept cash. Like, I can imagine, who here on the chat tonight can imagine a world that doesn't accept cash and only accepts digital currencies, right? I can totally imagine that. Think of how outdated it is to actually have physical cash to be used. You know how much more secure, how much more reliable, how much more efficient it'd be to have things on a blockchain in digital form. Man, I'm telling you, this revolution is here. Now, whether or not we're going to be in this market, 5, 10, 15 years from now, I know I am. So I hope y'all are also going to be as optimistic about it. So somebody says, Naeem, get away from that bully Nightbot, Joe. Joe is always on that Nightbot, man. Wow. We had somebody, one of our developers, help out, implement that. You're very welcome, Treeman Gill. Thank you so much, brother, for the super chats, man. It's highly appreciated here. And we'll definitely do this XVG analysis here, because I know a lot of people are actually in Verge, and I want to show you something interesting about Verge, because we see this pattern happen quite a bit. And I'm going to be really honest, this is a breakout pattern. I probably would expect some breakout here with XVG sometime soon, being the fact that it is forming this sort of pattern. I'll actually draw this out. It really, in my opinion, is a coin that has been oversold, because people don't understand that when you see these huge exuberant run-ups, you don't necessarily know where a coin is going to correct to, right? It's happened with Ripple. It went up to $3 and people didn't know it was going to go all the way back to $1. So you can see we have this contracting falling wedge forming here in this pattern. If you guys don't know what a contracting falling wedge is, and you all should be on our Discord, but if you all want me to pop it in here, I'll show you. The contracting falling wedges in our trading patterns here, you can actually see what this pattern is an indicator of. And usually when you have a descending reversal pattern like that, typically as it gets tighter and tighter and closer to the apex, which I'll show you, that's typically when you'll see that potential breakout. And this is actually the falling wedge here that contracts, and you can see how at the end of it, that ends up going like that, and that contraction and that tip is actually called the apex, and that's really where that pressure builds, where you eventually see a breakout. And I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here. You can see how we're ending this, and you can see this is a perfect falling wedge here. You can see how these levels and these wicks actually correspond exactly with this pattern, and now we're heading towards the tip of that apex, and typically this is where you'll start to see some price action, being that it is definitely becoming oversold. And I'll give you one indicator right here. If y'all want a little bit of a tip, you can see that volume here is more on the buyer's side than on the seller's side. You can see there's more buy volume on the MACD, on the histogram, and you can see even with this fast line, it's starting to converge here, about to point up. This right here is a perfect indicator of a potential breakout sometime soon. So I would say XVG, in my opinion, would be a good place to have your money here, especially in Satoshi values. Even though Bitcoin may start to drop, that doesn't mean that this Satoshi value is going to drop, because at the end of the day, when Bitcoin had the huge drop yesterday, a lot of coins were up in Satoshi value. So, and if they weren't, they were just not as affected as the coins that were affected in USD valuation. So the USD valuation is always going to be a little bit different, but looking at Satoshis, if you care about your Satoshis, that's what you should be focused on. Now understand, if a lot of you are not doing as well in this market, you really have to just start understanding where to keep your money during these drops, because these drops are what end up taking your money away and out of your pocket, because those stop losses aren't set in place properly. So just so you have that idea. Somebody says, is there a mastermind tonight? Yes, Ruby and Above mastermind after the live stream. We're going to be taking questions from some of the guests in the audience that are going to be present at that live stream and at night out. Somebody says, nearly all coins are oversold right now, man. Peter Walker. I would not agree 100%, Peter. Understand that a lot of coins are up in Satoshis and in USD valuations right now. You can see that typically is what happens after strong consolidation. And typically, especially because Bitcoin is heading towards these highs where we're going to most likely see resistance because of the flag, in my opinion, we're going to see a little bit of another drop here sometime soon. You can see we're right along that flag pattern. If we actually pull up a little bit of a closer chart, you can get a better view of that and see exactly what we're talking about. And you can see here, and we're starting to see that little bit of a resistance. We'll pull up the 1 hour, get a little bit of a better view. You can see we have this pattern up, 1, 2, and then bam, right there. And in my opinion, we're going to see a little bit of some downside sometime soon over the next couple of hours, being the fact that we had this exuberant run up over the past hours. And in my opinion as well, there's going to be further downside. And I'll tell you what, if you're in our Discord and you talk to our analyst, you'll get the same vibe. We actually had a pretty big analyst come into our Discord, and he's pretty known on Twitter for posting some very accurate calls. And he actually is an analyst here. And if you go to his chat here, he actually popped in. This guy is a little sneaky. And he literally just posted this, 6,118 on or before 17th of March. So he's obviously shorting Bitcoin, I'll tell you that. He's probably leverage trading that one. So very credible analyst. And in my opinion, as well as my analyst, as I've shown you, this resistance has acted as a very strong resistance over the past couple of weeks and all the way up until the latter part of December. So in my opinion, it's also going to act as resistance coming back up, which is right around the 9,440 level, maybe even 9,500-ish is where we're going to most likely see that. So somebody says, is longing clear to buy? I wouldn't go long at this point. I say that at this point, I would more be towards shorting that. So somebody says, thank you. You're very welcome. Somebody says, book giveaway. Yes, we'll do a book giveaway. We'll give away some books. Here's a really good book. I highly recommend this for those of you. I haven't talked about this one in a while. But if you guys are a little bit more advanced, Mastering Bitcoin right here will give you so much of an understanding about the fundamentals. One of my favorite parts of the book is really where it goes into the distributed ledger, and it gives you the power of it and what it really means to be decentralized, right? Because people don't understand decentralization. People just kind of think it's this phenomenon. In reality, it's extremely important to understand that decentralization can really create a world of, I don't want to say equality, but equality. Somebody says, Encash is more of a long-term hold. What's your thought on that? Joe T. We're actually going to have a video on that, Joe. I don't want to just kind of blur anything out at this point. We actually have one of our analysts, in the mode right now researching that, and he's going to have a video out on that soon. So just stay tuned for that, Joe. I'd rather give you the full scoop rather than half a scoop. So somebody says made 5,000 this week. Awesome, Kakashi. I'm sure you were either shorting or buying at the right time, which is awesome, man. Good for you. Somebody says, I had a killer barbecue tonight, sleeping well soon. Steve, oh, that is awesome. You're very welcome, Joe, for sure. Myanmar said ICX. We do have a couple coins here. I think a lot of people want to look at Tron. So let's go ahead and pull up Tron BTC and take a look at what's happening here with Tron. Tron formed a similar pattern to XVG where we saw this huge condescending falling wedge here. Now seeing a little bit of a little pop, but in all reality, in hindsight, you know, a lot of people are still at a big loss here with Tron, and you know, I can definitely understand that, being the fact that it had such an exuberant run up, and Justin Sun just hit over 400,000 followers on Twitter. I just felt like I needed to throw that in there, just so y'all know, because I like to look at Twitter followings as an indicator of community support. Some people like to kind of kind of go against, oh, why are you looking at Twitter? That doesn't matter. Yes, it does. It matters who's supporting, right? Looking at community consensus is such an important factor because it's all about getting community adoption and mass adoption, right? That's why one of my favorite ICOs that came out, which was Electroneum, has always been a fan of mine. I was actually in our Discord today just listening in on this individual that said he's been mining Electroneum for like so long, and he's so excited now. Prices are starting to head up. He's like, this is awesome. And I think it's so cool because I think Electroneum has been the one coin that I've heard more and more people talk about because it's such an easily accessible coin. And if you read their white paper, they talk about a potential future of having a coin that can be mined on an Xbox, a PlayStation, on a phone. And I think that's so cool because you have people in other countries that don't really have as much technology. They might use cyber cafes. They might go into other means of getting onto the internet. But now they have the opportunity to use whatever platform, whatever gaming system, whatever they have that has a CPU or a GPU to go ahead and mine. And I think that's so important because it can really provide some sort of a side income to somebody. And if you think a couple of dollars isn't a lot in the United States, well, if you bring that to another country, some countries will die for a couple $100s, right? It really could help a family. It could really help people. So I just want y'all to know that it's important to understand that there is a lot of intrinsic value in coins that have that sort of mass adoption and that mass appeal. Thank you, Treeman. Man, you are a baller tonight, brother. You just... Whew. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. You're very welcome, man. Thank you for showing us XVG as a potential breakout. I'm sure you helped some people tonight, man. Somebody says, amazing point. Thank you, Just Free. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that, man. It's a confident factor right there. So he says, I'm holding bags of Tron. I'm tired of it. Hey, Joe, I'll tell you what, brother. When people said they were holding bags of Ripple and they're tired of it, and then it shot to $3, they weren't really that tired after that. So sometimes when you're holding something for a long time, you want to hold on to it. So I will pull this up, though. You know, when I'm looking at this Fibonacci retracement, I'm not really going to go into too much of this exuberant run-up because I think that was just quite the run-up there for Tron. We'll actually pull up a graph here that has a little bit more data. I think the Binance chart will have a little bit more. You can see here, this actually has the run-up here. You can see this was actually one of the most impressive run-ups that I've ever seen. It was almost a perfect way up. I mean, this is a perfect J, and you don't typically see these J's when you're looking at any sort of stock market, unless you're looking at penny stocks that get pumped and dumped. You don't typically see that, but you can see here it really did get dumped pretty hard here. We saw some major consolidation. Now we're seeing some lows and a continuous low, and now we've actually got a very, very strict contracting falling wedge here. I'll actually draw this out with some support and resistance levels so you have a better understanding. Looks like we're finding some support right around 387 satoshis right now, which I would really call support, being that it is in the contracting falling wedge, because that is going to be a descending level. So we'll actually draw that towards the body of the candle, being the fact that that'll give you more of a clearer perspective on what's happening here. Then you can go ahead and draw out these descending resistance levels as well. Highly recommend, if you guys are using graphs, definitely draw out lines, because lines are where we're going to give you a perspective on where we're going to see a potential breakout, because you can see where the end of that apex is, as well as how tight or how open a graph is, because looking at the lines are important. You can see at this point, we'll actually pull up the 50-day moving average here and bold that for y'all. We'll have the 3 moving averages pulled up because I do want you to see what the moving average looks like here, because I think it's really important to have a moving average open, especially if you have your Fibonacci retracement as well, because you can actually look and see if there's any correlation between potential support levels and looking for when that's going to have a potential breakout. So we'll actually drop this Fibonacci retracement actually right over here from the top where we did see that exuberance. So we'll actually bring it all the way back down to around these levels. Actually zoom out right over there so we get an overall view here on what's happening. So you can see if we actually draw this out and we'll pull this open, you can see how we're now approaching the bottom of this Fibonacci, which is also going to be the end of that apex. So what I would say at this point is if we were to look at this price graph in these price levels, I would wait until this starts to get really about, you know, to the 350-ish Satoshi level, heading towards that 335 Satoshi level, which is the overall confident support level here, in my opinion. So we'll go ahead and draw that one out in red so you guys have an idea of where that's at. And I think as we start to approach that level, I think that's really where people are going to be a little bit more optimistic in terms of market sentiment, and we're going to see a little bit more of a run up there. And you can see here with the moving average, I'll actually go ahead and bold this here. We'll get the style open up. And you can see right here in the back, we've got this this EMA, which is the moving average exponential, which I'll actually go ahead and bold for you. And we'll put that in bright blue so you can see where we're at in terms of the EMA. We're still under the EMA, so I think we have a little bit more of that downside to be seen. And if we actually pull up this RSI, I'm going to actually go ahead and show you what we're seeing. You can see we're kind of smoothing ourselves out right below that 40. And remember, for under 40 of the RSI, that's extremely bearish. Until we hit under 30 is when we'll determine something is oversold. So looking at this right now, I would say it has a little bit more of a further downside to see, a little bit more of a correction. But as it ends towards that apex, as it heads towards the bottom of that Fibonacci support, and as it heads towards the top of the EMA, because the EMA will eventually flip and the RSI drops below 30, I think that would be the perfect opportunity to start dollar cost averaging your position in. And then if you're holding at this point, we're in bearish trends. So I would wait and see, once we can see that little bit of volume come in, that run up, we're going to see some sort of upside. You can see volume is starting to increase here. So as that gets a little bit more dramatic, I think that's when we're going to start to see a little bit more of that price action there for Tron. And of course, I think Justin Sun is not going to let his ego down and let this coin go to drain. I think he's going to keep working hard. He's an inspiration to a lot of the Asians in the market. Of course, he's had opportunities to speak to the United States and other opportunities of that nature, which I think is important, especially when you are the CEO of a company. You have to be able to go ahead and broadcast your message in a global way. So somebody says, could still dump 1 cent. Let's go. Somebody says Tron is worth 86,587 Satoshis to me. So if we go all the way back up here, in my humble but accurate opinion, it has never been worth that much. Somebody says, what about Neo? I am hyped on TKY for the future. I love Neo, what you wear. I'll tell you what, man, Neo, one of my favorite coins in the past month, because I kept watching some keynotes from the CEO, and I'm just falling in love more and more with their platform and what they provide. So somebody says, do you have any plans to do any live trading? That was one of my first videos I watched from you, and it was a great way to connect with viewers in the sniper community. TBH, it was also so exciting. Yes, I definitely plan to. The issue we have with live trading is because we're so delayed with the live stream, people actually try to copy my trades while I'm on a live stream doing live trading, and they end up losing money, and then I'm almost not blamed, I guess, quote unquote, but people are losing money. I don't want people to lose money. That's the least you know, it's the least interest I have for people to lose money, obviously. So you know, there's certain ways to prevent that. Obviously, is to set disclaimers. So I definitely plan to do some more live trading. I just think there's a little bit more of risk and liability involved with that, but it's definitely possible. You know, I used to do live trading. I love doing it. So I'm glad you were there when we did our live trading, because I did that a couple of times, and it was really fun. We were able to interact so much. A lot of people learned some stuff. They saw how you really have to trade with different swings, with different price levels, using different indicators. Really, you know, when you're trading, you have to use a multitude of indicators, but you also want to get good at a certain few. You don't want to just be a jack of all trades and a master at none, right? You want to master some indicators. When I started trading, remember, I only had $100 in my pocket, and I was working full time. I was grinding myself, and I was on these platforms trying to get an extra dollar, an extra two, an extra three, and it took me so long to just double my money, in which I eventually lost lost all of it. So I went from 100 to 200, lost it, and that's when I started seeking out more of that mentorship and that help, and I started to learn more about patterns. The first two patterns I learned were the cup and handle and the head and shoulders, and once I learned those, I had a grasp of, okay, I understand now that the market has some sort of predictability to it, and that led to my journey of where I've come now, coming from traditional markets down to the crypto market. I had the background in crypto when I was with Machinima accepting Bitcoin. So somebody says, what do you think of miners learning trading from Twitch, Voodoo Red? I think that's great. I don't think there's nothing wrong with it, brother. I think miners are what drive this community. At the end of the day, the miners are the ones racking that dough. Of course, they're putting up some sort of an investment, but you have all of these individuals like John McAfee, really honing in and focusing on these huge mining rigs and these mining, I would call them, facilities. And I think that there is a lot of potential future profit. Because I had actually, this is an interesting thought. Somebody said this to me. They said, Naeem, what do you think is the best hedge against this market? I said, what? They said, mining. I'm like, whoa, that's an awesome concept that I really never thought of. And I kind of thought of that a little bit deeper and deeper. I'm like, man, that makes so much sense. Mining is a hedge against the market because at the end of the day, all you're doing is mining the coin. You're not really trading it. And if the market's going down, it doesn't really affect you to the highest degree like a trader would be affected unless they're shorting. But a lot of traders that don't have the ability to short obviously are not in the best position in a market that's consolidating like this. Somebody says, when to put in more fiat? Good question. I would say at this point, I'd be trading, for me personally, 40 to, I'd say 30 to 40% of your investable assets. But in terms of capital that's on the side, I would say you want to start dollar cost averaging that when you know that Bitcoin is about to hit a bottom. And I would say watch for that one-day RSI because I told y'all, it hit under 40. That's bearish. So in my opinion, if we can go back down under 30, that would confirm the bottom like it did for the previous rally and the previous consolidation, which then could be the perfect point to dollar cost average your position back into Bitcoin to now go ahead and take advantage of those highs. And if y'all are getting the alerts, of course, we aren't posting any that are extremely risky in this market that's so uncertain, but we definitely are watching 24/7, ensuring that we can make sure we find the perfect point to get into the market and have that sort of confidence that we're going to see that upside. And at this point, in my opinion, all we're seeing is a little bit of an uptick from a huge consolidation, which is most likely going to lead to more consolidation. So for those of you taking advantage of the shorts, those are the happy people in this market right now. So let's go ahead and move to this next one. Somebody had a really good question here. Somebody says 500 likes put on lipstick. I'll take the bet. 500 likes will put on lipstick. Sardell. Y'all always have to throw in something extra. We'll do a book giveaway as well now that we're talking about lipstick. Oh my gosh. Now the every time. Man, I can't. Man, oh wow, we have quite a bit of viewers. I should have never said that. Oh man, I'm not putting lipstick on, but I'm just kidding. I'm a man of my words. Gosh, you got those. You know what it is. I have this adrenaline rush, and like I just end up making like quick calls. I was on the phone with my friend today. He's like, "Man, you always jump before you think." I'm like, "Yeah, I definitely got to work on that one." So let's do a book giveaway though. So this was actually written by Andres Ontobanales. I probably murdered that name, but he actually wrote another book called The Internet of Money. I want to give a giveaway, and we'll ask a question to see who was paying attention today. I talked about the moving average convergence divergence quite a bit today, but what I want to know is what is this called right here in orange? What is this orange called here in the moving average MACD for short? What is this orange called? It's a type of graph style. Let's see if somebody remembered or listened for the book, The Internet of Money. Let's go ahead and do the Internet of Money giveaway. So he says 400 people on YouTube and only 13 likes. Now we're at 100. Oh my gosh. If we hit 500, oh my, I'll probably pause the live, stop it right at $4.99. I'm not putting that lipstick on. Shout out to Mike Wiley on YouTube. And we'll give another one. We'll do another one. Mike Wiley said, histogram. You won that one, brother. Send me a message on Twitter and we'll verify your account. Let's see. Josiah, WF, Lamb, ABD, ATM. Oh, you know. Let's see. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch a tiger by the toe. The winner will be the next winner. Let's see. Let's keep going. Let's do a lady. Nina Lang. Shout out to Nina Lang on YouTube. You as well. We'll do another book giveaway, so don't worry. if you didn't get that one. Now we're going to pull up our next chart here. I think this is going to be a very important one to watch, and it's going to be, as you all know, Ripple, XRP, BTC. Now, looking at Ripple, we're going to go ahead and clear out a little bit of this graph, and I'm going to show you something interesting about Ripple, because yes, we're seeing this contracting falling wedge as well, which we're seeing with a lot of coins in Satoshi value, because remember, the market almost follows Bitcoin in terms of Satoshi value, and you see the market act very cohesively in terms of how it reacts to Satoshi value, consolidations, or even any sort of exuberant run-ups, and you typically see that that cohesiveness throughout the market, in which you really want to make sure that sometimes you have to hold Bitcoin, because if you're holding Bitcoin, you're not necessarily losing Satoshis, and if you're focused on Satoshis, which you should be because you're trading Satoshis for altcoins, then holding Bitcoin will ensure that you're not losing Satoshis, since you're actually holding the Satoshis. So whether the USD value is going down or not, you're keeping those Satoshis, which I think is what matters, because here's what I'll tell you. If you're not focusing on Satoshis, give yourself a month or a week, focus on Satoshis, use Satoshi charts, not USD charts, and see the different type of results that you get, because now you're actually trading the pairing that you're actually trading. You're not almost trading a deceiving pairing where you're buying substratum with BTC, but you're looking at the substratum USD chart, right? Which I don't know if there is a substratum USD chart. So looking at this contracting falling wedge on the 1 day, there is something to note here. You can see we saw this huge little rally here out of nowhere for Ripple. It was right when we started to actually go right below that 30 RSI. Now you can see we actually touched just a little bit under, and that's what initiated that oversold market sentiment, which is why the RSI and the relative strength index is such an important indicator, because you can see as soon as the market realized, okay, we were fairly oversold, we saw that exuberant run up. And then if we pull this up, people talk about the Coinbase news, and it could be a coincidence, but in my opinion, there's a lot of technicals that had to do with this run up. And now we're starting to see RSI back a little bit higher. And what you want to notate when you see that is, did the RSI pass 40, which it did at 44. Now we're seeing this tip back down. So it's very simple when you see this. When you see an RSI hit bottom, go ahead and find momentum back up, breaks over 40, bullish. Your next focus is to see, all right, you see why we actually stopped at 40? This resistance in the RSI was right at 40, because this is where you're going to watch to see, is this going to get back to a bullish trend or a bearish trend? And this is exactly where I think we should draw the line to understand, all right, if you have a position in Ripple, watch the RSI as well. Make sure it doesn't head back down towards that 40, because if so, we can see some further consolidation. I wouldn't be surprised, because intrinsically, XRP, in my opinion, doesn't have as much worth as coins like Litecoin and Bitcoin that have limited quantity, or coins with de-application platforms where you have ICOs built on. XRP is more so used within their own circle, if you should say. If you actually are in our Discord, we actually had a Ripple developer come in, and I'll tell you the story. He came in about a couple months ago, and he actually worked with Jed McCaleb, who originally co-founded Ripple, eventually moving on to the Stellar project. He actually had to do with Mt. Gox for a little bit until he sold it, and then a year later was when it actually had the huge hack. So Jed McCaleb and this Ripple developer worked together in conjunction with each other, and he said Jed McCaleb was an awesome guy, a great leader, but he really talked about the intrinsic value of Ripple and like what it really does do. Like, what is Ripple's value? What is its worth? And he himself, I'll just tell you this. Somebody asked him in our mastermind. He was there for about 3 days. Somebody asked him, he said, "Are you bearish or bullish?" He said, "Bearish." And we said, "Why are you bearish?" He said, "It just doesn't need to be at a high price. The XRP token is not meant to be at $5, $10, $16, $20, right? It's meant for a whole different purpose. It's not like Bitcoin where it's limited in quantity. It was meant at first to be a peer-to-peer exchange, now becoming a storage of value." So that's kind of the vibe that I got with Ripple. And then, like I kind of talked about before with the ICO and one of my mentors, Yazan, I like to listen to people that have that credibility. I don't like to just listen to the FUD. I don't like to listen to the news. I want to hear something from a developer. I want to hear somebody that has action. If I'm going to talk about Tron, talk to me about Justin Sun. Like, where's Justin? Let me talk to Justin, right? I don't want to hear all this FUD. Where's Justin? Where's the actual, the meat and potatoes, not the fluff, not the appetizer, give him the meat. So that's my opinion on Ripple. Somebody says histogram. They're still calling that out. They want that. What was the developer's name? Man, I couldn't. If you're on our Patreon mastermind, if you're, I think, a Ruby or a Gold, I don't know what it was, but if you go back to around, I think it was beginning of January-ish, we actually had him in the mastermind. So all 3 of those podcasts are still up on the Patreon. So somebody says, I would like to inform 11,000 people in the Discord. What? I don't get that. Somebody says Ripple is going to 0. I don't see that happening. Treeman, shout out to Treeman again, brother. What coins do you suggest for long-term investment? Very easy to me. Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum. Very, very prominent coins. The original 3, in my opinion, all have some sort of intrinsic value. I would skip Ripple. I'd go down to EOS. I think EOS has some huge potential in the future. Doesn't have as much intrinsic value just yet, but as a de-application platform with restriction of 21 nodes that's centralized versus having like a platform like Ethereum, which has more of a spread out system, it allows EOS to be more efficient and faster, which I think a lot of supply and logistics and other different industries will be attracted to more than they would be with a coin like Ethereum that has more of that spread out consensus and spread out nodes where it's a little bit slower, because the more nodes you have, the slower it gets. If you watch the keynote with the Binance CEO, he talked about decentralized exchanges and why they would be so hard to be adopted if they don't have any sort of quantum computing aspect to them, to where they're extremely fast, because when you have so many nodes, it slows a lot of things down. If you guys don't know what nodes are, you can think of them as like computers or servers, right? So it's verifying the transactions. If you're looking at something that's proof of stake, or even if it's a proof of work, proof of work, even if it's a proof of stake, though, to a certain regard, you have to have those coins maturing in some place, right? So somebody said, so yeah, those are my long-term investments, by the way. Somebody says, will XRP at least touch $1.5 in the future? Oh, another long-term investment I haven't talked much about recently, but I've talked about it before, is Stellar. I think Stellar and XLM, great platforms, and I think Jed McCaleb as a leader. As you all know, my preference when looking at ICOs especially, I like to look at the leader, right? I like to look at who's the quarterback. If you got a good quarterback, you'll get to the end zone. So if you've got a good leader like Jed McCaleb, in my opinion, you have someone that will take Stellar to the next level and will continue to develop it, and no matter if he fumbles or not, he'll go ahead and grab that ball, have that Hail Mary thrown, and then hit that touchdown. Somebody says 3 coins for beginners: Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash, maybe, because that's on Coinbase now. Somebody says XRP will make you rich. Go ahead and spread that one around on Reddit. We got Spacebird, Sag Jim, Sianj in the house. Joe Young said, what about Neo? Very bullish about Neo as well as a long-term investment. Yeah, there are a lot. I mean, we could talk over and over, but I mentioned Neo earlier. I didn't want to mention it again. I wanted to bring a little bit of new spice to the plate, but absolutely. Do you include the wicks with the Fibonacci retracement tool? It depends what I'm looking at. You know, the wicks are definitely extremely important because that's where prices are, right? So if you guys don't know what the wicks are, these are the wicks of the candles, right? So if you're doing any sort of candles, you know, analytics, I guess, you're looking at these wicks. Now, if we're on a one-day chart, if you zoom into a 1 hour chart, these wicks end up turning into bodies. So these are legitimate price levels, but to a certain degree, there's less strength within the wicks, right? So it's really about the perspective of the time frame that you're looking at. So if you're looking at a one-day chart, there's more strength than a 1 hour chart because there's more data. Think about it. It's a one-day chart. So you've got 1 days of data spread across the board versus having 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour. It's more powerful. So if you look at a trend on a 1 day, it's more powerful than looking at a trend at a 1 hour. So that's why I always highly recommend, if you're trading in general, if you're looking at a coin, look at the overall trend, go from the 1 day and then zoom right in. You don't really have to go to the 1 week. Even in the stock market, though, you can go to the 1 week, but typically what you'll see is just some sort of a consistent pattern, because the more data, the more consistency you see, and that's where you actually can see those market cycles. If you guys don't know how market cycles look, pretty much any market cycle kind of goes like this, where it's constantly going up and down, but the highs are a little bit higher. So that's why people talk about like the real estate crash. If you were part of 2008, the best thing to do is either hold your properties or buy more, because we knew that prices were eventually going to go back up. And it might take a little bit long, but at the end of the day, it's better than losing money, because you only lose when you sell. You know, my uncle was extremely successful with real estate, and he talked about losing is only when you sell. When you buy is where you make your real money. So somebody says, Loggy Gaming, can you talk about Electronium, please? Love Electronium. I talked about it earlier. Very, very long-term hold. Somebody says, how do you feel about that stellar bullish triangle call that was in the Discord? I didn't see that call in the Discord, Mike Wiley. Maybe we'll look at that in a sec. Somebody said, is there a mastermind tonight? Yes. there is definitely a mastermind tonight. If y'all are on the Discord, we will be in the Ruby Above mastermind, and we've already got over 100 people here in the Crypto Voice too, so y'all can come in there, chat, have fun in there as well. Somebody says, OMG is good long-term. I love Amisco. Great project as well. If you guys know the Amisco team, Amisco was actually around before, they had their coin. So it's a great established already, used company, if that makes any sense. And I think that we'll see a lot of potential upside. I was at a mastermind with a lot of like the prominent individuals here in the community. And I am subscribed to a lot of the private groups, where quote unquote whales are. And I've heard a lot of them talk about coins that are going to come out that are disruptors within already established industries or platforms, right? For example, the Telegram token. By the way, there's a lot of Telegram ICO websites that are fake. So if you all are going to look at ICOs, make sure not to invest in that. I'm actually doing a really exciting ICO comparison right now because I am going to be doing an ICO alert soon for the Sapphires. As you all know, we have those ICO alerts, and I'm comparing these two right now to see which one I think is better determined to be a long-term investment. Because really what you're looking for in an ICO is getting into the whitelist or getting into the pre-sale of the ICO, because that's where you're really going to get the lowest prices. And typically, as long as you have the right ICO, because some of them are only going to accept accredited investors, and to become an accredited investor, you have to have at least $200,000 of income for at least 2 years or a $1 million net worth, right? So if you don't have that, then typically you can't invest in a lot of these US-based ICOs, but there are some that have KYC, which is Know Your Customers, which is almost like a security preventative measure that's in place to ensure that we are truly investing within the right mindset. Somebody says, by the way, are you a full-time trader? Yes. 8R Shakur said, new subscriber. Yes. I was blessed with the opportunity in October of 2017 to go full-time. If you guys don't know this story, I walked into my job. I used to do telecommunication sales, and I had a guy named Anthony who was actually almost a mentor of mine, definitely a mentor of mine. He did a lot of options trading, very successful, and he was there. And he's not full-time because he's got a huge family and not really necessarily so worried. I mean, he was making quite a bit at this corporate job, but who wants corporate if you're younger, right? He was a little bit older. He had like 30 years in options. He actually worked with one of the largest hedge fund managers in New York. And by the way, one of the best books that I recommend is called Principles by Ray Dalio. It's actually by an individual who runs Bridgewater, which is the largest hedge fund that manages over $175 billion in capital. And he wrote this book, and he's a very introverted individual. So it was extremely it was surprising for him to write a book because people just never heard from him, Like he was very, very closed off, not really in the press. He predicted the 2008 crisis. He predicted the European crisis. So highly recommend that. But so Anthony, I walked in, he's in the cubicle next to me. He's like, Naeem, you're making more money on that computer than you are on the phone. Why are you here? And literally that made me want to just die and quit. I was like, not die, but I was like, I was kind of like, why am I here? Not die, but I felt like almost not depressed, but I'm like, you're right. Like, what the heck am I doing here? Like, I'm actually making money trading. Why do I need to make money here? So that literally just made a huge click in me. And then I literally quit. It was like October 19th. And ever since then, I just walked away. I started the YouTube channel, just started talking about my passion, I guess. And this huge following came, and I'm very blessed and appreciative for it. And, it's something that I'm so, if you look at my room, I've got a whiteboard, and all I do is map out, the future. Look at that. I've got my whiteboard there. I've got all my stuff there. And I'm mapping out the future of SnipersTube, and I'm making sure that I can bring you all the best content and be the best leader I can be. So with that being said, we're going to be heading over to the Ruby and Above Night Owls soon. I really appreciate everybody being here tonight. Did you guys enjoy the live stream? I hope all of you did. I don't want to keep all of y'all here for too long anymore. I want to be more clear and concise, go straight to the point. We did all of our analysis, which is awesome, and we did get through that, which is great. Somebody says, time to buy a whiteboard. H-Carp said, big fan, dude. Yeah, whiteboard, highly recommend it. JC said, always do. Somebody says, stellar. Michael O'Brien, Homo Gaines, Eric Jackson in the house. We got everybody here. So somebody said, is there such pattern as an inverse wedge? Yes, absolutely. Where is the support and resistance are diverging rather than converging? There's a typically it doesn't. I would say that it would be the opposite of that. So when you have an inverse wedge, it's opening up, and that would be more of, so it would still be considered a wedge because at the same time it's going in. So if you actually go on our Discord, you can actually pull up the Trading 101 section, or it's actually called Trading Patterns now, and you can actually see exactly what I'm talking about here. But when you actually pull this up, oh wow, I just had something drop there. But you can see here, there's several different patterns here, but the wedge itself is anything that's contracting together to see that sort of apex form. So when it's inverse, it's literally just the opposite, but that would be considered a reversal pattern. So typically, people don't realize this, but when you have a descending support level, it's a breakout pattern. With an ascending support level, it's a reversal pattern. So if you think about it, think about like the common philosophy of buying the red, selling the green, and that will just make sense. So somebody said, thank you. You're very welcome. Vision board, somebody says, kudos. Yes, always have a vision board and have a broken light on your studio background. Somebody says, love your info always. Thank you, JC. I appreciate that, brother. Somebody said, early morning. Somebody said, are you Arabian? My parents are Middle Eastern. Yes. That's where I get the unique name, I guess, huh? Somebody says, BTH is so choppy right now. Like I said, it's still in a very, very critical, sensitive mode right now, in my opinion. It's very, very, uncertain right now, in my opinion. And the only reason we're seeing this sort of uprise that we've seen over the past couple of hours, and pretty the past 24 hours, is because we saw such a strong consolidation, but we're still in a downward trend. So just notate that when you're looking at Bitcoin. So somebody says, TA for ETH, please. Somebody says, I love your TA. Thank you, Mahyar. I definitely appreciate that, brother. So we pull up ETH BTC. This will be the final technical analysis here, but we will take some requests and some questions. But I definitely want to do the ETH TA, so we can go ahead and cover this. Now, looking at this price here, we'll actually do the ETH. If we want to do the USD chart too, I'll actually go ahead and clear this out because I know we were looking at this. Let's go ahead and clear this out. I'll actually show you exactly what's happening here, the USD chart, because it's quite interesting because there are some really strong support levels here. You can see the first support level is right around 670 US dollars, and we're finding that bounce once again. You can see the MACD is looking bullish. You can see there's about to be another crossover with the sellers starting to run out. Now, one thing you always want to look at is what the past is indicating for the future. And looking at the 1 day, you can see how the MACD is starting to gain a little bit more of those sellers, but they're starting to weaken compared to what we saw back here around February. So if we were to zoom into a 3 hour, you can see there are more buyers now, and you can see how this MACD has taken a sharp swing. So that's a very bullish sign. Once you see those swings here, especially when you see, I call them a U, you see these U's right here, very bullish. This is what we saw with Bitcoin prior to that huge run up that we saw all the way from 6,000 up to 11.6. So looking at the MACD, very bullish here for Ethereum. In my opinion, we're going to see some upside here, especially because even if Bitcoin starts to consolidate, we'll go back to the BTC chart. What I'll tell you is in the past, we've seen Ethereum act in an inverse manner compared to Bitcoin. If we pull up a side-by-side comparison, you can see here if we pull up Bitcoin, we'll go ahead and draw that out here on the second chart. You can see exactly on the USD chart of Bitcoin how it acts in an inverse manner compared to what we saw here with Ethereum. You can see if we were to zoom out, as Bitcoin had dropped in value, we'll do a 1 day chart here so we can get a better perspective of the overall trend, and then the 1 day chart here. You can see here when you have that side-by-side pulled up, when Bitcoin saw this huge consolidation, you can see at one point Ripple or Ethereum was going up, and then Bitcoin saw its low, and then eventually when Ethereum saw its low, Bitcoin saw a rally, and then eventually Ethereum just went parabolic compared to what Bitcoin saw, which was a little bit of consolidation. So in my opinion, Ethereum has acted as a hedge against Bitcoin in the past, but it's still tied to it in a high regard. You know, it's not necessarily going to stay alone and independent. If you think about it, Ethereum in all reality is still tied to Bitcoin. If Bitcoin goes to zero, Ethereum goes down, right? Who here thinks that if Ethereum or if Bitcoin goes to zero, Ethereum is going to stay up? Say I if you think that. If you think Bitcoin goes to zero, Ethereum's going to stay at $800, say I. Nobody's going to say I. People are saying I. It's not. It's not. It's just inevitable. No coin will sustain itself if Bitcoin drops. Even DGD, right? Gold backed, right? No, it's not. It's most likely going to also go down because it's market sentiment. It's market psychology. It's risk and reward. People are not going to want to risk their money if they see the overall asset, the first cryptocurrency, drop to heck. Now, long term, yes, there could be coins that will eventually rise, that will eventually overall have intrinsic value to them. But in the short term, in the immediate, of course, coins will drop if Bitcoin drops. So if you expect Bitcoin to eventually drop, then all of these other coins are also probably going to drop hard too. And eventually, long term, you can see coins build up intrinsic value, but they would have to detach themselves completely from Bitcoin, which if you know a coin that's completely detached, send me a message, and I'd love to invest in that one. Because there's got to be a reason to that. It must be a good reason. Somebody said compare tab top left is handy. Naeem. I like to do it manually. I don't know. We can always click the top left, right? The top left. One thing I like to show is the area. I don't know if people look at the area, but it's a very interesting graph because you get a really overall understanding of like the amount of strength that you've seen in the past versus what we're seeing now. You can see when you're looking at ETH graph like this, we're seeing some strength compared to even what we saw in December, which is quite lacking for a lot of coins. Like if you pull up Bitcoin, you could see almost halfway, not necessarily 75% there like we were seeing with Ethereum. So looking at the chart though, let's go ahead and complete the analysis here. We'll pull up these candles and kind of draw some support and resistance lines out so we can get an understanding. First, we'll drop the Fibonacci retracement here. I think it's very important for Ethereum because there's quite a bit of data here that we can use. And the more data, the better, right? So if we actually drop this here to the Fibonacci retracement, we'll actually just use this statistical data that we have here. We're finding support right along that Fibonacci retracement. That's why I'm telling you, in my opinion, we're going to start to see a swing up in Satoshi and USD value for Ethereum. I think it did see a little bit of some oversell, and you can see we had a double bottom here in the RSI where we both dropped right under 30. This is called the double bottom if you guys don't know. Bam, bam, drop below within the same time period, within a little short interval, and that right there confirmed it, especially because that Fibonacci retracement as well is also that bottom there on the 0.38. And if you go ahead and zoom in here, we'll go ahead and do the 4-hour chart. You can see exactly what's forming here in terms of overall trend. It looks just like a rounding bottom, right? So if you don't know what a rounding bottom is, you can go ahead and go on our Discord. You've got a beautiful, beautiful chart here of a rounding bottom, which is a breakout pattern in comparison to a cup and handle, except the difference is the cup and handle, you come from a breakout. With a rounding bottom, you come from a consolidation. So the rounding bottom comes down and then forms. Then you can see here exactly what we're seeing here with the rounding bottom as you come from that consolidation. Now this is starting to form. So in my opinion, there is some further upside. Ethereum is in a great position. So thank you for mentioning that as the price prediction, because that was on the title. So that's that. Somebody says USDT massive gains. You know what's so funny about the USD chart? I like to look at this because this pretty much tells you the US dollar value against Bitcoin and how Bitcoin is trumping it. If you go to the Tether chart, because this is obviously tethered to the US dollar, you can actually do the BTC valuation, which is the one in orange, and you can see how literally this is basically showing you how the dollar is acting in comparison to Bitcoin, right? You can see the dollar literally goes to nothing right now. It's seeing a little bit of that skiing trend. I call it the end of the slope. It's for those of you skiers. Somebody says, can OFC strength of on the ETH BTC pair would imply massive strength about to come of ETH USD or weakness consolidation in BTC USD? Thanks for that thought, brother. That's actually very important. I'd love to hear that in the Discord. You know, giving that type of stuff is important. Somebody said histograph. They're still going to the giveaway. Somebody says, will you do a giveaway in a stream? Yes, let's do a giveaway. So we just talked about a pattern. What is the pattern called here? What is this pattern? Let's see who's paying attention for a Internet of Money giveaway. We'll do another one. Another one. Somebody says, Encash, Dopey. Zach Dem's in the house. Dennis, Daniel, Crypto Cat, Evolve. H-Carve 007. Did you win before, man, on Twitch? I don't know. I think you've won before. If not, you won that one. Send me a message on Twitter. We'll do another one on YouTube just in case. Let's do Oh, man, so many people. Oh, who was that? Ron Thomas. Joe, I almost got you, man. But then literally I saw Ron Thomas right before that. So Ron Thomas on YouTube. Send me a message on Twitter, brother. You won. And did you guys enjoy this live stream? Did this help out? Any final thoughts? Any final questions? It was good to have all of y'all tonight. Zach Dem, Sag Jim, Josh Shetta, Christopher. We're heading over to our Ruby and Above. If you guys don't know, we're all going to be heading over here. Most of us are either in the Ruby and Above Night Owl or we're going to be in the Discord main chat. We have over 84 people already there right now. You see the Ruby and Above Night Owl is going to start to fill up. So definitely see some of y'all there tonight on our Discord. If you're not on our Discord, don't be stubborn. Get on it. You'll learn so much and you'll really advance your knowledge. And I think it will definitely help a lot of you. Somebody says, yes, I have. I'm lucky, I guess. You're welcome, Sardell. You're welcome, Joe. Thank you, brother. Nirvana, Leandro, Ron Thomas, Crypto Brand, Eric Jackson, Zach. Somebody said Neo, Nirvan Bug. We're going to do Neo soon, man. We did Neo yesterday. We got to wrap this up, brother. Sorry. HR, Sam R, H Carb, Zach, Elwin, Sam. Sorry we don't get all the requests, but we try our best, right? Chris Sparks, Christopher Pattyfoot. That's a nice name. Thank you guys for watching tonight, and we'll be heading over to the Discord. Love y'all, and we'll see you soon. Stay positive, stay level-headed, and make sure you don't make any irrational decisions. Snipers out!